Hey, you're
Recording.
listening to Abyss Gazing, a horror podcast where we celebrate all things spooky and mental health.
I'm your co-host Mark,
I'm your co-host Josh, and we are celebrating 50 episodes for this time.
and we have with us Andrew Carey from
Yes.
Evergreen Terrace.
Hello. I
Hello.
hope, I hope my microphone is working okay.
It's working great. Can I ask you a left field question right out the gate?
Yeah.
So I am a huge fan of The Simpsons.
Nice.
And if you guys are like me, you know that the Simpsons live at 742 Evergreen Terrace.
Yeah.
Is that where the name comes from?
Yeah, man. You don't know this? Yes. You might not know the band, but yes. Yeah, of course. Yeah, Evergreen Terrace is where the Simpsons live, and we got the name from the Simpsons.
So
It's a great
was it just one of those things y'all were sitting on the couch like, let's name our band after the street the Simpsons lived on, or
it was a Wendy's. So not a couch, it was a Wendy's. I was eating a baked potato. Um, or maybe a chicken sandwich. It was before I went vegetarian, but like, and then the bass player who started the band with me, Josh Smith, he was like, "But let's just name the band Evergreen Terrace. It's the street the Simpsons live on, and I think that would be cool." And I was like, "Great, let's do it." And it was 1999, and the Simpsons were on Fox television like two times a day for like 5 and 5:30.
Yep.
I don't know if you guys got the syndicate up there, but it
Yeah.
was yeah,
Ours came on. It was Monday through Friday. We had two channels that played them. They had episodes that would play at 6 and 6:30, and there was another one that would play at 7 to 7:30.
yeah,
So every day. That was my education.
yeah. You literally, yeah, literally your education. Yeah, it's great. It's a great show. Okay, I can go on. Yeah,
Yeah,
uh,
we were telling Mark, I was like, we probably should have had him do a Simpsons episode. Like, I feel like there's probably a lot more to talk about with a band that's named after the Simpsons.
yeah, funny story. I wasn't allowed to watch The Simpsons growing up.
there's okay. So there's a lot of people out there who were not allowed to watch The Simpsons growing up. There's like, because there was a big unified culture kind of almost, and there's always been subculture, but in before this internet, people just, oh, I'm gonna fucking watch whatever's on television. And a lot of people loved The Simpsons. They were great, but at the same time there was a big backlash to it because this 10-year-old yellow boy, like, told people to
Yeah.
eat his shorts. And they're like, I can't believe he said eat my shorts. So she's like, you're not going to be watching this. You're going to say the same things. But yeah, of course, which made it even more like attractive, when you got older and you're like, oh, I'm going to make my own decisions. Yeah, I'm going to watch The Simpsons because I never was able to. And it makes it, yeah, probably one of the reasons why it lasted so long was because there's such a backlash of, you can't watch The Simpsons. Sorry. Yeah, I
Yeah,
grew up in a Southern Baptist church, so
yeah, I grew up in like a conservative household, and ironically enough, horror movies were something I wasn't allowed to watch. And The Simpsons were like, I was allowed to watch them like off and on, but there was definitely a period where my mom and dad would be like, no, you're not allowed to watch it. Of course, like I knew the channels they came on. I knew like the tricks of like
yeah,
you put headphones in and you just watch them, man. It was like I was like rebelling, and I was like, yeah, I was like, cool. Simpsons
yeah.
have like been my favorite show since I was like 7 years old.
Yeah,
There's a great podcast called The Simpsons Are Greater Than, and it's all about basically how The Simpsons are one of the best television shows out there. You should check it out. Maybe you guys can do a collaboration at some point. I don't know. Yeah, The Simpsons Are Greater Than. It's great, great stuff.
Yeah, I was always a smart ass growing up and it never really went away. It just got worse. So my parents were one of the ones that were like, you're going to start talking like him because you kind of already do. So that's part of the reason. But I grew up in Southern Baptist house, and I wasn't allowed to watch Simpsons, He-Man, She-Ra,
He-Man,
all that
no,
stuff
like I don't know, I
What?
don't even
because
understand.
there was witches in them.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
fair enough.
exactly why.
Fair.
Hmm. Yeah, I wasn't allowed to watch a lot of that stuff growing up. MTV wasn't allowed in the house, and of course, me being me and my brother being my brother, we watched them anyways. So
Well,
Ooh, I'm rebelling.
it,
I'm watching a cartoon.
yeah,
Oh man, it's the
and then
exhilarating times of the 80s and 90s. Good
now it's
God.
gone so far in the opposite direction. I fall asleep at night watching horror movies and people getting murdered. It's
Yeah,
oh,
that
how
really
the
worked
times
out, didn't it,
change.
Mom?
Well,
Jeez.
for those of you guys that don't know, Mark and I like have in the 50 episodes we've been doing the show, we've always kind of talked about the relationship between metal and horror, and it just kind of seemed fitting to do Evergreen Terrace, which is a
metalcore.
metalcore type band. I saw you guys at Warped Tour. It was my introduction to you guys all those years ago. Um and I always really liked you guys' music. I thought you guys put on a hell of a show.
Thank you.
Um but yeah, I was telling Mark, I was like, man, I was like, I you guys have had an interesting last few years. Can you guys kind of talk about the who Evergreen Terrace is and kind of the where you guys are kind of at now in terms of creativity?
So yeah, Evergreen's been around for 22 years. And so the past couple of years um we got a new drummer who is the drummer of Yellow Card, which is a local band in Jacksonville, and they're not local anymore. Of course, they're Yellow Card. They're huge and massive. But that band kind of broke up, a few years ago after the pandemic, I think. And then, but anyways, Longenu, he joined with us over the summer to play to go play Europe with us, and he was just like a great fit. So he had joined the band, and now we're just kind of like in the middle of writing and just hanging out, playing music together. That's basically about it. The same thing that we've been doing for 22 years, but with another drummer.
It's I didn't even know that like about Yellow Card. Like what a genre switch to go
Yeah,
from pop punk with a violin to metalcore nasty breakdowns.
yeah. I mean, he loves it. He's great. Yeah, he was, and man, he's just incredibly talented musician. So, like drumming wise, he picked it up. So our drummer Brad had to leave the band, um, and he was it was just some deep family things, and we miss Brad a whole lot. That Brad had to go do. So he couldn't do the tour, and so we were like, oh shit, we don't have a drummer. This tour is already booked. It was like almost 2 weeks, and then so our friend was like, why don't you try out Longenu? And we were like, okay. We had one practice with him, like literally one practice, and then we flew to Europe, met, and then had a practice the day before the show, and it was perfect. Yeah, so I can't tell you how great of a musician, a drummer Longenu is. Yeah, so we had a great tour. We got along, he fit in like perfectly. He loves heavy music, loves metal. I think he probably listens to more metal than I do, and yeah, more hardcore music than I do too. So,
I've heard that a lot about uh, metal bands is that they tend not to listen to a lot of metal.
Yeah.
yeah,
I don't know how true that is.
No, it's I used to do like metalcore music too back in the day, and I everyone in my band that we would play with like always listen to like Green Day and like Rise Against and like punk bands. And then it was always the flip for like punk bands. They never listened to like punk music. They always listened to like
Yeah,
metalcore music, like Devil Wears Prada or like Acacia Strain or Evergreen Terrace.
that's funny. Yeah, it's
I
because
know.
you don't. Hey, you're just around it all the time. Like, let me go listen to somebody scream some more after I just been in a small room, fucking 100 people. They're all screaming too. I'm just gonna listen to screaming.
Yeah, I've heard Randy Bly from Lamb of God talk about the fact that he's a punk kid and he kind of feels like guitar solos in metal or like somebody jerking off on a guitar, and he loves punk, but he's in what, one of the biggest metal bands probably ever.
Yeah,
Not yeah. So
Their
it's kind of funny.
their shows are insane live. We saw them last fall, and it was the first time my wife and I had ever seen them, and like, what a hell of an introduction. They put on
nice.
a great show.
Yeah, yeah, they are a great band. Yeah,
So there
probably one of the best metal bands for sure.
are there any bands you've toured with that just like surprised you to tour with that ended up being like cooler than you thought they were going to be, or just complete and total assholes or anything like that?
We've luckily enough have been uh spared out of the 22 years about only going on tour with just a few bands that were assholes. Just maybe two that I can think of that I'm not even gonna say. But like one of the biggest surprises, and this was really funny. Um, one of the biggest surprises was how um we went on tour. We before they got really big, we actually ended up picking them out was asking Alexandria. And they like so we were we were like suggested like, hey, why don't you bring this band on a tour with you guys? And we're like, okay, well, I guess. They're like, oh, they're gonna blow up. Don't worry, they're gonna blow up. So we brought them out on their very first, or maybe it was like their second American tour, and they ended up being just really nice kids. And then they were like, when we get big, we'll take you out on tour. And they ended up actually fulfilling that promise and taking us out on tour with them after they kind of blew up a little bit. And they're just really, they were like, I wouldn't think I could never really like, I'm never got into their music, but them people as people, it was they were really nice kids. Yeah.
Yeah, and Danny now is an example of like straying away from hardcore because he's like got a country career now.
Yeah, that's right.
Wild.
I think he might live around me. I'm not sure. I'm like looking around the house.
Well, I
No,
mean,
yeah, I know I do. I think that he lives in Jacksonville or something, or Duval somewhere. I don't know.
well,
Don't quote me on that.
I know, Nurgle from Behemoth, he's got kind of a pseudo country project he does.
Yeah, you just got to go country.
I
Ooh,
mean,
Or
wear boots.
or if you're in the case of in country, Garth Brooks, you go the rock route and you go Chris
Yeah,
Gaines.
yeah. If you started in country, then you go. What was his name? Chris Gaines? Is that what it
Yeah.
was?
Yep. He got like the little emo swoop.
He did have the emo swoop.
So weird.
I know one of the fun things over the years, because God, I couldn't even tell you how many bands I've seen live, is seeing the bands that are like the intro guys that get like half hour or 45 minutes to open end up blowing up later. And you end up wondering how the headliners end up feeling when they have a band under them that just destroys a venue and they have to follow it up as the headliner. That's one
Oh,
thing I've always been curious about.
yeah. Have you God, it's we've done that before. It's terrible. But um we've also been that band, and it also that doesn't. I mean that that feels good when you know that, like, okay, so we were direct support for another band, and that band had taken us out because we were blowing up and like are getting bigger, I should say, in like 2004, 5, and so that band was almost on the way out. We would play right before them, half the crowd would leave, and it feels good. But then when you get onto that, when like we've taken out August Burns Red before they got big, and Stick to Your Guns
Oh,
before they got really big, and of course all those bands are going to be headlining over us now. So I mean, but honestly, for me, it was you're like, yeah, all right, like it bites a little bit, but then when you see them in their success, and then you have gotten to know them, like we've gotten to know, like people, like I said, asking Alexandria, you're actually pretty proud of them and pretty happy for them, and like, oh man, this was like, because you spend all this time on the road with another band, and hopefully people might get a good rapport with the other bands that they go on tour with. We try always to get a good like camaraderie with them. So when they do succeed, it's a feeling of almost like, damn, all right, great, good for them. I'm very proud of my friends, and like I'm very happy for them. Yeah. So I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but that's how I justify it.
yeah. I as a podcaster, like I've also seen that. Like when I was first starting out, I had like we would invite guests on, and I would like with other podcasts, and their a couple months later, their podcast would just like blew up.
Yeah,
And so it's like it is very much like that humbling thing. It's like, man, like I wish that was me, but like you know what? At the end of the day, like I'm really happy that like you're doing A, what you love, and B, that you're bringing a lot of like love and joy to the
yeah.
people that are your fans.
There's a lot of times when you come to, I guess like comparison, and comparison's almost like the same thing as regret. Like, why are you
Hmm.
like comparing something that is somebody else's, and why are you regretting something that has already happened? There's nothing that you could do about either one of those things. So like bring the focus back in on yourself, and like be happy for what you've done and what's going on in your life, and that kind of shit. And if you're not happy with it, change it. But I'm preaching to
It,
myself here when I need to say things like that. But
I mean,
yeah,
yeah, like I mean, at the end of the day, like I mean, success is going to have some semblance of effect on your mental health, and
yeah,
like if you're happy or you're upset, like it's up to you to make that change necessary. If you need to to go to a therapist, like it's up to you to like find out the right therapist and like take those first
yeah,
steps. Or if you need to talk to someone, you need to be the person that is going to have that conversation, because at the end of the day, we talked about this a couple episodes ago in our Outer Waters episode, but like at the end of the day, like depression is this like mask that is really easy to wear and conforms to your image so well that like if you don't know the signs and like you don't know what caused the source of that is like it's really easy to just like assume that everything is going completely great in that person's life.
yeah. Oh, absolutely, I agree, 100%. Yeah,
I
there's
mean,
just
like last year you had the singer from Black Dahlia Murder, Trevor.
yeah, yeah. That's
Nobody
yeah,
knew there was an issue. And then just suddenly it starts popping up in news feeds everywhere that he had died. And the only thing I really ever saw afterwards was that he had killed himself. Was the
yeah,
only details I really found. How does something like that, because they were so well known and a band that was well loved, and a singer that everybody that toured with them that I had seen interviews with talked nothing but good about him. How does something like that affect um, bands in general when something like that comes out? I don't know if y'all toured with Black Dahlia or not, but
we toured a couple times with Black Dahlia. We played a few festivals in Europe together. We did a tour together. Um, and like you said, man, like Trevor and everybody else in the band was just amazing people, really nice. I think that I think a lot of depression comes with a sense of empathy. Like, so if you're a deeply empathetic person, I think that you're naturally going to be depressed. And with empathy does come a sense of kindness and a sense of like where people not only just see like kindness, they're like, okay, I got to be kind to everybody because I know their struggles, like I can feel their struggles. Um, and then there's people who have killed themselves and who like Robin Williams, who is just this, brilliant comedian too, where it's like, oh, his sole purpose in life was to make people laugh. And he ended up killing himself. It could have been due to that he didn't want to suffer through some kind of illness, but like uh, I think that maybe I don't know, like given from how good of a person that Trevor presented himself to be, he probably like suffered from something, and I can't just speculate, but I would have to say like a lot of it came through probably is a very empathetic and kind person, and that's what I got from him. And sometimes that just translates to depression
Yeah.
because you know what it feels like to be that way, and you don't want anybody else to feel that way. And I get that too a lot. Like it's like I don't ever want anybody to feel like the shit that I feel. So I would love to make somebody else feel better.
Yeah. And I also
Yeah.
think too, like, sometimes hindsight really like is a lot. Like you're saying, like you might not see it in that moment, but
Yeah.
then like you look back on the art that they create. I've been like super nostalgic in my music listening journey recently because of Lost, which is Linkin Park's like Lost single that they released, and I grew up on Linkin Park, and the loss of Chester Bennington and his suicide really like was one of
Yeah.
the celebrity deaths that like really impacted me, and I was like I like fell off like listening to their last couple albums, and after he died I went back and re-listened to him, and like just listening to the lyrical content you can hear like, and even stuff that like I grew up with like Meteora and Hybrid Theory and Minutes to Minute, like you can hear that there's a pain and there's a crying out there. And I think that like, sometimes you might not be able to see it in that person directly, and you might just be like, oh, well, the art that they're singing isn't necessarily how they're feeling. They're like just trying to like connect with their audience. And I've
Yeah.
it's crazy how
Like
many theories there are out there like that
no
about
motherfucker, there's a reason why we're screaming.
yeah.
Like, okay, there's a reason why. Yeah, Chester, he screamed. He was
Oh yeah.
screaming. He screamed really fucking well, like with a pitch and everything. But like, yeah, Trevor, yeah, yeah, there's a reason why they're screaming. So yeah, I mean, it does like, there's a catharticism in listening to heavy music, and you're just like, oh, maybe they had gotten it out because I had just listened to this, and it's kind of helped me get through something. So maybe people don't realize it because like the music is there to help, and the music is on a level that is actually, it's supposed to be some kind of medicine for the soul. And when you listen to heavy music, that's the release of some energy that you had built up. And so then maybe they just can't think about it. They can't process that. Like, yeah, you wrote these lyrics, you're screaming these songs. Damn, you okay, man? Like, you all right? Yeah. Especially going
Yeah.
back and reading the lyrics. Yeah.
If you or someone you know is listening to this podcast right now and you're struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, we encourage you guys to please reach out. This is the heartbeat of why we do what we do. Suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, and as of this recording, there are 132 suicides that take place each and every day on American soil. And when you scale back internationally, there are 800,000 successful suicides. That is one death roughly every 40 seconds. So if you or someone you know is struggling, you guys can go to victimsandvillains.net/hope. That resource is going to be right in the description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this. There you'll find resources that include the National Suicide Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-8255. You can also text HELP to 741-741. We also have a plethora of other resources, including churches, getting connected with counselors, LGBT resources like the Trevor Project, and also veteran hotline as well. Please, if you hear nothing else in the show, understand that you listening to this right now, have value and worth. We get it. Suicide, depression, mental health, these are hard topics, and the stigma around them doesn't make it any easier. But please consider the resources right in the descriptions below, wherever you guys are listening, because once again, you have value and you have worth. So please stay with us.
Yeah, and like, I mean, science is like, they've done like actual like studies on like the mental health like positive effects of metal and horror movies both, and it's like, it's crazy to me that like both still kind of have this like almost like black sheep quality to it, to where
Yeah.
like people can't like
Yeah,
understand how these like quote unquote dark things or like evil things have like a positive outcome. It's like, this is exactly what you're saying, Andrew. It's like, you know, there's a reason that you're screaming, is because like we are, you know, transitioning what we're feeling into like art, and like it's a healthy expression of like how I feel in the inside.
yeah, there's such a bad connotation for being a heavy metal fan or a horror junkie or whatever, that they don't realize the some of the research that's come out has actually said that those people that are fans of that style of music and genre of films have a better way of processing negative emotions and things like that, and tend to be happier, more accepting people overall than people that don't.
Yeah. I'll take a metal fan any day, please. It's fun.
What-
It's fun being around it all the time.
One of my best metal experiences was, I used to work with a guy who was really big into hip hop and rap and stuff. And he had the mindset that metalheads were nothing but angry, violent people and racists. I talked him into going to a Ministry concert.
Oh my
All
God.
right.
Yep.
Nice.
We left and he was, dude, what's the next show coming out? And we were planning to go see, I think it was Devil Driver and Venom, who was following
Nice.
up a couple weeks later, but the tour got canceled, and he almost immediately became a convert. He was, dude, this is not what people say it is. That was one of the best things I've ever done in my life. And it comes from, he's only heard how people that are into metal are, as opposed to actually taking the chance and experiencing it.
Yeah. Word.
We're a crazy bunch, but we're a fun bunch.
Yeah. But you know, you need some of that craziness to exist. And on our 50th episode, Andrew has been so kind as to bring us to the future in the year 2029 for the Terminator, which I still have reservations on whether or not this is actually considered a horror movie.
Well, it is listed as one.
So,
It's
all
listed
right.
as one?
Yeah.
All right.
So, one of our lives that we did a couple years ago for the charity streams, we covered the Silence of the Lambs. And I still to this day, like, I understand that Silence of the Lambs is considered horror. I still consider it a psychological thriller that sits outside of the genre. And I've seen The Terminator quite a few times, and I think it's a great sci-fi film. It's a glorious action film. I I
I
can understand how people think it is considered a horror movie because it develops the slasher genre
yeah,
formula,
I was gonna
but
say it follows that Halloween or Friday the 13th formula in
Yeah,
almost every
the
way.
stalker that's coming after you, that's unstoppable. There's yeah, if he wasn't a robot, it would be a horror film, you know. If he was, you know,
And if he had a knife instead of a machine gun.
yeah.
well, so like all right, so like that's the interesting thing about this movie
Parts
is
all
like
the other Terminator movies, those are action sci-fi movies.
sure,
Like even I saw part two before I saw part one.
oh
Um
same.
yeah,
I didn't
so
even
and
know like
then I saw
Terminator
part
1 existed until like a couple years ago. And I was like, oh, I was like, maybe they just went for T2 because like it sounded cooler.
it was like, where's the first one at? I don't know. He's around. I knew that there was when Terminator 2 came out, they were like, it's a sequel to this one movie. It's completely different. And it's really actually not that different after like going back and watching Terminator 1 again. Because I'm like, Terminator 2 is set in me. Like that, I
Yeah.
know it back and forth. But I was like, what? I was like, yeah. And the reason why I brought up Terminator was I was talking to my friend Dan, who's a big movie buff, and he was just like, we were talking about Terminator at one point, and he was like, it's a horror film. He's like, it's a horror movie. I was like, it's not a horror movie, it's a sci-fi movie. And then he convinced me, and then we watched it, and we just convinced me about it. And I was like, you're right. You got a stalker, unstoppable, supernatural, just guy that's just out to kill somebody,
Well,
kill
so
a girl. He's out to go kill a girl. Wow. Talk
yeah,
about some
and like
repressed people. Maybe the horror film
I mean,
needs to,
it even
needs to do some reflection. Why are you always trying to go kill some girl?
I mean, it even has the stereotype of killing the people that just got it on.
Yeah.
it does.
Yeah.
So like
There's every stereotype there. It's just that it's a robot with guns.
well, look, like Chopping Mall is not that terribly far removed from this one. So it's like we have a cyborg esque like machine coming to kill people. And so like I understand that this movie can be considered a horror movie, but what was really funny is that when we said that this was going to be the movie we covered with you, Andrew, one of my friends, Brandon, who's helped us before in the past podcast, he's a big fan of Evergreen Terrace too, and he was like just baffled that like there's a sect of people out there that consider the Terminator a horror film. He's like all of these people need therapy, and I was like, well, consider it like it basically just takes every slasher trope, brings it into a sci-fi setting, and it's a hybrid
I
thereof.
really think it's quite genius. I mean, James Cameron set up a franchise that was able to like continue to this day. And then, but it was, yeah, like you just said, it had the formula of a horror film with robots. Like that is kind of horrifying. I mean, like Short Circuit, if you look at it, is a horror movie too.
Sure.
He
And
got
like
struck by lightning and became alive, and he has a laser. All right, Short Circuit that guy is dangerous. Johnny Five.
I would say the second Short Circuit because he loses his shit and snaps and goes after people.
unpredictable, man. Yeah,
Yeah.
like there's the sequence like in here where like they're first introducing the idea of the T-800s, and they're like, oh, it looks like a man, it talks like a man, like that's terrifying to like not know like actually like who your aggressor is. Like at least with like things like Michael and Freddy and Chucky and like all of these like other slasher icons, like they have like a very distinct look.
Yeah,
But you like throw them out, like you clearly don't know like what the Arnold Schwarzenegger looks like. as a robot, like he looks just like an ordinary man.
Just a giant, huge, buff, beautiful, ordinary man. I was like, man, I don't know. There's something wrong with this guy. Dylan's supposed to look that good. I mean,
Well,
he's a chiseled man,
Oh yeah,
beautiful body.
he was
he's
a
like a former, was it Mr.
bodybuilder.
Universe?
He's a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
I think he was Mr. Universe.
Yeah, they said he like changed the way contestants wanted to look
Yeah,
because of how big he was.
giant.
Yeah.
Just yeah, yeah. Yeah. He does. You're right, but I think that when I don't know. I don't know about getting into. I'm not qualified for any of this. Like
I mean, we're not either.
not
So
like a professional movie buff and or film critic in any way. I do like I love art, but just in the novice sense of any type of art. But just like this looks really beautiful. This is how I feel about it. Having said that, the Terminator though, where Arnold Schwarzenegger, I mean, that made Arnold Schwarzenegger, uh, that brought him to basically a part of
the pop culture zeitgeist.
pop culture as an icon. So, and he did a good job of playing like a cold blooded, not even yeah, literally cold blooded, like killing machine. He did a good part of that. And so when you say like you don't see, you're like, oh, Arnold Schwarzenegger comes in and the Terminator comes in, you can't really tell, you can't see it, but he actually does. There's no life in his eyes. He did a really great job acting as like just some like Terminator machine. That's so instead of he's just the part where he's like, I'll be back, like or like repeating the lines, like he's doing a great job as being a robot and like, oh, I'm learning human like interaction, but also he's still cold. He's still just a killing machine. And I think that part of it, if you like I said, I watched it yesterday, again, and I was like, just to totally refresh. And it's like, yeah, man, this guy's cold. This guy is, yeah. I was also really, really high when I watched it. So which usually when I'm really high, I just like look at people acting and I'm like, oh, you're just acting. This is terrible. Why am I high and watching television? I need to be out in nature. But like the Terminator was great. I was like, man, he's doing a really good job.
Like when you look at his career up to this point, like I have his filmography pulled up here, he had essentially kind of just like really leaned into those like really cliche like muscle bound guys.
Mm-hmm.
Like obviously he had done two Conan movies before this one. He had done a Hercules movie before this.
Yeah,
And
the Hercules movie, I think, was his debut, wasn't it?
yeah, Hercules in New York is 1970.
Yeah.
And
Oh
But
wow.
Conan kind of got him noticed,
Yeah.
but Terminator
really
shot
set
off
him
his
up.
career
Yeah.
because he went on to do Commando and Predator after that.
Yeah, and I feel like for here too, like you can definitely tell that like he's like still like this filmography is really interesting to look at. You look at like Hercules came out in 1970, Pumping Irons 1977, Comebacks 1980. He did Conan the Barbarian 1982. 1984 was this and Conan the Destroyer, and then you get into a lot of the other ones that we know. And I'm almost curious if like there's a transitional period to where like he is starting out to kind of like phase out of like the bodybuilding competitions into acting. And so like he's very stoic here. And I think the movie definitely plays to his strengths. But I definitely think that it's after Terminator that you definitely start to see a lot of range from him as an actor.
I believe he said in an interview that he was having trouble getting roles because his accent, for one, was so thick at the time. He had to kind of work that out.
Sure.
It's still thick. And I believe a lot of the roles he was competing in Sylvester Stallone. And I think Terminator was one of them, if I remember right. They actually had an almost competition going on through like the 80s and 90s with their action movies back and forth.
I think, yeah, didn't they do like almost like a a nod to that in The Last Action Hero.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, when you're going through the blockbuster and Last Action Hero, it's Sylvester Stallone as the Terminator
It
in the movie.
is.
Yeah, and he's like, I guess he kind of is like, well, that's it's, I don't know. But the kid was like, what? Sylvester Stallone? He's like, yeah, he's a bad actor or something like that, like,
Yeah.
yeah, interesting.
And
Yeah.
then they would, all those years later, they would team up to do Escape Plan and The Expendables. So,
Yep.
I have not
I
seen,
think
I have
they've
not
said
seen The Expendables. I don't know why. I wanted to. Is it any good?
it is those that grew up in the 80s and like love movies like Rambo, Predator, it is like they're like just Avengers. It is
I mean, Chuck
it's
Norris is in one of them, for Christ's sake.
yeah.
Oh,
It's it's not necessarily a bad movie. It's not necessarily a good movie. It's an
It's just
entertaining movie.
it's
yeah.
just an action movie with all the
Yeah.
big names from the 80s and 90s.
Yeah. Just a
I'm also not the right audience for that, so there's that.
You watched the horror version of that, didn't you?
So what's that?
There is a horror version of that. It almost made the film festival last year.
Yeah, there's a
Really?
horror. Yeah, it's got like Hodor and England and a bunch of them in it. And it's all the horror actor icons in one movie where they're all like serial killers or something
Yep.
locked up in a prison.
Yeah. All right. Sounds wonderful.
That's more our Expendables than the Expendables is.
So okay, so to get back to the Terminator being a horror movie, right? So I think the first Terminator is a horror movie, but I wouldn't go as far as to say that like Aliens would be a horror movie, or even like for some reason what we're thinking. I had like a thought. I'm like even or yeah, the first Rambo wouldn't be a horror movie, even though they have the same sense of even Aliens would have the same sense. Like there's a creepy thing out there. John Rambo, the Rambo movie that could be even almost an indie flick, I guess. But like it was,
Sure.
like so there's people killing people or something killing people out there. But I wouldn't say that Aliens would be a horror movie where Terminator, the first Terminator, would be.
So I could see the same kind of idea with Aliens, with Alien itself,
Yeah.
the original being
Yeah,
a
the
horror
Alien,
movie.
yeah.
It's got all the aspects of a horror movie. But the second one is more like Terminator 2, that's more sci-fi action.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that assessment. I think that like the both the Aliens and the Alien and Terminator franchises, they built their franchises on what could be considered horror movies or could be considered action movies, but then like with subsequent sequels and like other projects, they end up like developing into like the traditional action movies that we know nowadays.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they tend to sell a little better than horror does.
Yeah.
Although that hasn't been common the last few years.
No, I was about to say, I was like, man, horror's making a strong comeback. And the fact that these budgets are getting more and more tiny, like there's more of like a return. Like Blumhouse has completely changed the game. Terrifier 2 changed the game. Then you also have like Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey that's playing out now.
I
It's
really wanna see
delightful.
that.
Have you
It's
seen
delightful.
that?
I saw it opening night is quite delightful. It's if you like
yeah.
80s slasher, I highly recommend it. It's a fun time, but
I have to see that. Yeah.
They're doing
it's
it. I
great.
think they announced a sequel.
Oh, dude, he announced an entire universe. He's got plans for Peter Pan, Bambi, a
I heard
sequel.
about Bambi.
So to answer your question, Andrew, I want to say it was either last year or a couple years ago, Winnie the Pooh actually fell into public domain.
Okay.
So you can actually do whatever you want with that character, but it can't be Disney's version of that character.
I
Oh,
feel
wow.
like Blood and Honey is what happened to Pooh after he discovered bacon.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, there is some friends eating other friends in that movie.
Wow. All right. Piglet. Poor little piglet.
Oh, Piglet's in it, man. Piglet's vicious in that movie.
Really? All right.
Yeah.
I need to see it. Yeah, that would be great.
So, yeah, Terminator is, but getting back to Terminator, I'm really not sure where you guys want to like go with this one because,
Well,
like,
look at how influential Terminator was.
sure,
We just covered a movie for Christmas. Was it Christmas Bloody Christmas or whatever the crap it was called?
Yep.
And it was essentially a Terminator in a Santa outfit. It was
Oh, wow.
essentially what the movie was. And we saw looking through movies yesterday, I think it was last night. We came across all these movies that are very blatant ripoffs of the Terminator. So it was a sci-fi horror that almost set a standard for a complete genre to the point that you can name probably half a dozen movies off the top of your head, no problem, that follows the same formula and style of Terminator.
How would you guys like to help us get mental health resources into schools, conventions, and other events? Well, now you can. Simply go to patreon.com/victims and villains for as little as $1 a month. You guys can help us get mental health resources into current and upcoming generations, educate and break down stigma surrounding mental health, suicide, and depression. And you get exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else. And you guys can tell us which Nicolas Cage movie you want us to cover, and we'll do it. All it takes to get started is to go to patreon.com/victims and villains, or simply click the link in the episode description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this episode. Pick your tier and get started today. Yes, it's that simple. So quickly select the tier that you want and help us get hope into the hands of the depressed and the suicidal today.
I mean, but then Terminator Terminator followed a formula and style of
Right.
the horror movies that were going on at the time too.
which
So,
yeah, like to piggyback off that is crazy because like I said at the beginning of the episode, I've never considered this to be a horror film until we initially started talking about this episode and what we were going to cover, and like that just kind of really goes to show the impact of something like, you know, Halloween. Halloween was kind of the slasher that really kicked off the copycats, where you obviously very clearly have Friday the 13th, and then you have like a whole slew of other direct-to-video slashers that came in that wake. And it's kind of only a matter of time, of course, before you have something like the Terminator, where you have a big budget director coming in and saying, hey, like, I think this is really dope, but like what happens if we added these like sci-fi elements into it and gave it a little bit of a science fiction edge? And I think
you
that's
know,
one of the things that like,
yeah,
yeah, and I think that's one of the things that like James Cameron's like really good at, is like we talked about this in our BIS episode, is like he's a director that like doesn't do a whole lot of projects. Like there's noticeable gaps between each project he takes. Avatar obviously being the biggest one between Avatar 1 and Way of Water. But every time that he does that, you notice that there's always a great deal of quality, and you understand why he took so long between projects.
yeah. He don't want to do garbage. That's why Evergreen hasn't put out a record in 10 years. We're just like we're just writing our opus right now.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, you've had a lot of great musicians have done that. How
Yeah.
many years between Demuse's last two albums? It was like
Oh,
10 or 15 years, something like that.
you said Muse?
Demuse.
The Muse. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
They put out a CD a year or two ago, and the last one before that was I want to say like a decade or longer,
Oh, wow.
because it was during the period when they kicked Vortex out of the band.
Oh, wow.
And Tool, they're 10 years between like every album they put out.
Yeah.
So it's not unheard of in music. And but it is a little unusual in movies. How
Yeah.
how often do you see directors do that? I know Cameron put out a handful of movies through the 80s, but after Titanic, he seemed to take longer and longer gaps
I
before
guess
So
putting out a new one.
yeah, probably because he just one. I could see that someone not wanting to put out something that they can't fully back, can't have a full vision of, and then two, like probably because he doesn't have to. He's like, I don't even want to anymore. Like I don't. Like yeah.
yeah,
I
so
could
like
see there being like, I just, I worked really hard for decades. Now I don't have to put out a movie every 2 years to make success. And like he goes lives in a ranch somewhere. So maybe that's something, but also maybe he just wants quality and needs like all the ducks to be in a line to execute it, the right
yeah,
budget.
and like I think there's like a number of like different factors, but like looking at his filmography, like this is only his second movie, and then you go into Aliens, and then The Abyss, and then
Yeah.
T2, True Lies, Titanic, Avatar,
Because his
and
first movie was one of the Piranha movies.
yep, this Piranha 2, The Spawning, which
No,
is
Yeah.
wild to follow up that move, like to follow up
With
a
Terminator.
yeah, a
was that
crazy
his first
movie.
thing?
Do what?
That was his first movie, the Piranha movie?
Piranha
Piranha
2.
2,
Piranha 2.
which
Okay.
if I
Yeah.
remember correctly, the first Piranha is oh man,
I man, if
it's
you
a
didn't say that,
Roger
I haven't
Corman movie,
heard
right?
about that probably in like 30 something years, that movie. I can't, yeah. I remember that movie scaring the shit out of me when I was a kid,
Oh,
and
it's
I'm never jumping in a river ever again. There's piranhas in there.
it's so much scarier than it's so much scarier. So it's Joe Dante, but it's so much Roger Corman produced it. That's what I was thinking of. It's so much scarier than Jaws, because like with Jaws, like it's like you don't go in the ocean. Like, but like here you have like shallower bodies of water, and it's not just one creature. This is like
A
thousands of
school.
it's a school of teachers, it's a school of fish.
They
And
teach.
like and they also like don't just eat you and like you bleed out and you die. Like these ones like actually like actively like will
Rip you
eat you
apart.
and slowly torture you. And I'm like, that is is terrifying to me. But
Well,
like
have you ever seen like National Geographic videos of piranha taking something out
Yeah, they're just
yes.
little bites.
where they eat like an entire fish so quickly that the skeleton's there and the head is there still trying to breathe because it doesn't know it's dead yet?
That's insane.
Yeah.
Fucking piranha.
But yeah, that was James Cameron's first movie, was a piranha horror movie, B movie,
So yeah, piranha. Then went on to
Terminator.
Terminator. Wow.
And then I think Aliens and the Abyss
Oh,
after that.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right.
Which Abyss was actually considered a flop. But I
Really?
it
fucking,
is.
I
Yeah.
fucking love that movie. And I'm looking forward to the fact that he said probably around March they're going to release it on HD finally.
Oh, wow. Okay. Is it going to be the uncut? Have you seen the uncut version of
Oh,
the
I
Abyss?
own the uncut version.
Oh, I,
I also own the uncut of Terminator 2 and the uncut of Terminator 2.
wow.
So
I
they,
don't even
they
know what happens in the uncut of Terminator 2.
so you can, most copies of Terminator 2 that you pick up, you get the theatrical release and the director's cut, and you key in on your like Blu-ray remote the date of Judgment Day, August, whatever, and the screen changes and it turns into an extended cut. It's like 3 hours and some change.
Jeez.
And there's a scene where the liquid Terminator is in the oh, I'm having a brain fart. Who was the kid he was trying to kill?
John Connor.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was in John Connor. Yeah, I do that. I'm horrible with names. Uh,
It's
Especially heavy
fine.
stuff.
he's in his room and he's running his hands over everything where he's kind of reading it as he's touching everything. And it's
Uh-huh.
only in that cut. It's little things like that, like the end scene where he's in the where they're in the metal the steel plant or whatever it is. Um, it's actually starting to show the damage he's taking is starting to affect him. Like
No,
he
really.
starts like glitching out and sticking to things and all kinds of stuff like that. But
Which
it's only in that extended cut. It's
Oh,
not in
wow.
the director's cut or the regular release.
That's impressive.
which
Yeah.
on that note, we talked about it several times with the thing, the Outwaters. We love practical effects here. And I feel like this, like in terms of like practical effects, probably doesn't enter into the conversation as much as it should because the practical effects and like the slow deterioration and like wear and tear of like the T-800 like is menacing. Like obviously everyone like recognized in like the image of Arnold in the leather jacket and the gun and the
Red
sunglasses
eye.
because it's iconic. But like seeing him like it- throughout the course of like probably the back half of this movie is like I feel like that definitely enters into the conversation of not only slashers but also creature features because the practical effects that Schwarzenegger endures looks incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that once again, to go back to Schwarzenegger's like acting too, like where he has that cold like look when he's when after the car wreck after like and his eye is like coming out and he had to do the eye surgery and it's just the metal there and he's looking at himself in the mirror and it's just like even it's a prosthetic too. It's like a prosthetic face. This is how amazing James Cameron was at the movie in the directing and so the prosthetic face is even looking like obviously that's going to look cold, but they it's like almost like a recognition of that he's like I am the monster, I am the Terminator, like he's a cyborg, so there's some I don't and a super intelligent robot, so maybe there's some kind of consciousness there that I can see. Maybe I'm like playing outside of what I'm supposed to be reading, but I thought that was like a really good when you see him deteriorating. He's like I'm not. Almost looks like he's like I'm not supposed to be deteriorating, but I got to keep
Yeah.
going. Like I don't know. I don't know. Like I said, I was
Yeah,
high.
and what's also like really crazy about that is I ran across this fact in research for this is that when he was actually when Cameron was hired as the director or hired onto the job of Piranha 2, he was actually brought on as the special effects director.
Mm.
And the only reason that he got the upgrade to the director was because the original director, Miller Drake, left the project due to creative differences with one of the producers.
Mm.
And I'm almost curious if like that background in being like having special effects is the reason that the special effects are as impactful here, a film that's only 2 years away from that original job, the way that they look as good as they do.
Well, if you watched after the rig he's driving explodes and the skeleton, the robot stands up,
Yep.
it's limping. To tell you the
Mhm.
kind of detail James Cameron has, they show a shot from like ground level as it's walking by, and it's almost like the equivalent of the T-800's Achilles tendon is broken in half on the one foot
Yeah.
he's limping on.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys think that like and maybe you guys don't have the same relationship, but I feel like after T2, like the quality of these movies and like the stories, like whether you're talking about the comics or the television show that they try to do and the other movies in this franchise, they never raise themselves to the quality and attention to detail that you see here in Terminator and T2. And I think it's because of Cameron. I think once he exits the
Absolutely.
equation,
Yeah.
you lose
There was
what was special about this.
I remember when Terminator 3 came out and I was honestly kind of mad. I was like this it's done. I was like this is done. I saw Terminator 2 probably when I was like 12 or 13 or something like that. Maybe, yeah. And it scared the shit out of me. I was like, damn it, I don't want the robots to take over the goddamn world. And then, they were like at the end, it's like, you know what? Judgment Day might not even happen now. And and I was like, this is fine. The movie is great. Everything is good. Left it open and now come back with it. And yeah, the story was all the other stories, all the other ones, all the other Terminators are just they're kind of garbage. Yeah.
Yeah.
they're kind of rehashes of the same movie, just with some
Yeah.
different characters, except for um
Sarah Connor.
Sarah Connor. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so stay with me. Like the Terminator is to action movies the way that the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is to horror movies, where they have essentially taken something that was great within those first two pictures and then completely just gone back to like rehash it. Like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I think, has had like Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, because there are like what, three or four different timelines right now, and they've like gone back to like ignore multiple sequels different times and Terminator clearly does that to where like you're saying like Andrew like Judgment Day might
So
not even happen or like there's so many different timelines that exist.
Yeah.
so they make the comment in the first Terminator that at least in this timeline, implying that there are other timelines and chains of events
That's
Yeah.
fair.
where, like, Halloween is a choose your own adventure series. You pick which movies you want to
Yeah.
watch to get the story you want.
This is
Um,
true.
And this time, yeah.
yeah, yeah, it really
These
is.
comic books, you really helped us out with being able to just ex machina anything. It's a different timeline.
Yeah, I think that's the difference, is that Terminator deals with time travel and screwing with timelines, where Texas Chainsaw Massacre is, we're just going to write this story now because we didn't pay attention to the previous one.
Yeah.
Which irritates the absolute mess out of me as a Texas Chainsaw fan. But I digress.
Well, sorry.
I'm kind of that way with Aliens and the way they went back. I like Prometheus. I've only watched Covenant once. I need to rewatch it, but I know they've altered things in a manner that's like, how in the hell are you going to connect this with
Yeah.
Alien?
And I've been waiting. I've been waiting for the connection after Prometheus. Oh
Yeah,
my God, calling me.
they
Sorry.
oh, you're fine.
They're
Pause it. Somebody was calling him, and he accidentally hung up.
I'm okay. There we go. Recording in can you hear me?
yes.
Okay, great. Oh, let me start video. There we go. So Aliens. Aliens is a really great movie.
They never finished connecting the two storylines together.
They never did. No. And I thought that Covenant was gonna connect it, and it's just like this is where big aliens live at on this planet with a hurricane. And
Well, also
Danny McBride was funny. I like Danny McBride.
keeping in mind too that the Disney Fox merger happened right around the time of the Covenant film. They are currently working on a prequel series.
And I think a new movie too.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
there
they're
are a
doing-
couple projects in the works right now.
It's a Colonial Marines TV series for FX, I think, and Hulu. And they're working on a new movie that I think is dealing with Newt from
Yeah.
Aliens.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So there's that. But yeah, I think that might be it for us on this episode of Abyss Gazing, talking about the Terminator. I would love to hear from you guys. Where do you guys stand? Is the Terminator, in your opinion, considered a horror movie? Have we convinced you, or are you still on the fence? Let us know. Tweet to us at Victims and Villains. But Andrew, where can people follow Evergreen Terrace online, and when can we hear some new tunes?
Oh, you can check us out, Evergreen Terrace official Instagram. I think we also, we're like old, so we got a Facebook too. Um, You can listen to us on Spotify if you wanna be a dick about it, or you can go buy our stuff on Apple Music. New tunes should be out sometime this year. We'll see. We're pretty chill. We've got too much Southern culture in us where we're just like, we're just gonna be lazy. We'll do it whenever. We know actually we're waiting. Like the good director, James Cameron, we're just waiting until all things are lined up and we just want to put out some quality. Yeah. Well, new music comes out this summer. It should be out like late this summer. If not before then. And that's about it.
Groovy. I'm excited to hear it, especially being a fan of Yellow Card. I'm excited to hear how Longitude, is that his name?
Longinu.
Longinu. I'm excited to hear how he's progressed as a drummer, and also how you
Yeah,
guys have progressed as with a new drummer as well.
I can't wait to write with him. Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
Cool.
all right, Mark, where can people find you online?
I'm just nerdy painting miniature stuff on Instagram at Titanium Juggernaut Painting.
Sick.
Well, you guys can follow me because I'm also a nerd, and you guys can follow me on Letterboxd at Captain Nostalgia. You guys can follow us wherever you guys get your podcast from. Abyss Gazing, and you guys can follow our parent company, Victims and Villains. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, wherever you guys get your podcast from, or you guys can go to victimsandvillains.net, where you guys can find links to more podcasts in our network, and most importantly, our mental health resource library. Until next time, remember that the longer you gaze into the abyss, the more the abyss gazes back into you.